Would you love to paint a watercolour landscape but really haven't got a clue where to start or how to start? In this video I'm going to take you through a simple watercolour landscape, step by step, demystifying the whole process. Keep watching and you'll know how. I'm Alison Fennell from The Pottering Artist. Welcome back to my subscribers, and if you'd like to join us, please click on the little red square that's in the bottom right hand side of the page and the little grey bell so you'll always get alerts when I upload new videos. So in this video we're going to look at painting a watercolour landscape. I'm going to demystify the whole process for you. We're going to go very slowly, and by the end of it you'll have a better idea of what you need to do when you want to paint a landscape. So keep watching and see you in the next clip. We're ready now to paint this Yosemite mountain scene using a cold colour palette, as if it's a freezing cold January day. So this is the image that we're going to aim to produce. If we don't get it exactly right, or if we only nail certain elements of it, that's good enough. We're going to go slowly. This is another version I did about sometime last year for my class. So again, I kept it all cool and with a limited palette. So the colours we're going to need for this are, these are all Winsor and Newton professional grade watercolour tube paints. If you haven't got the exact colours, do the best with what you've got on your palette. So I've got Burnt Umber, Winsor Blue green shade, because there's also a Winsor Blue red shade. I've got Winsor Blue green shade, it's cooler. Then Cobalt Blue. So it's a very limited palette, 3 colours. The paper I'm going to use is this watercolour block. It's by DMD paper, and there's a link to this in the description below. This is actually vegan paper, there's no gelatin sizing inside it, but I've tried it out and it is rather lovely. This is 300 GSM, also we call it in the UK £140 paper, and so it's cold pressed, also known as knot and cold pressed are the same thing. And the size of this is 17.5 centimetres by 24 centimetres. Alright, and my picture, I've got the outline available for you if you want to email me for this. If you're not strong on drawing, I can email this to you. You can print it off and transfer it. If you want to transfer it, you can use Saral, which is a bought graphite transfer paper. Also Trace Down is another one, or you can make your own piece of Trace Down, which is far superior to Saral and Trace Down, because this is smudge, it doesn't smudge and leave ugly black marks, and it's very precise. If you want to see the video on how to make a sheet of this, which will last you a year or more, there's a link in the description below. So let me show you how I do this. Because this channel now is going to be dedicated to beginner watercolourists, I know that when I started I couldn't draw a thing. It took me 7 years or so to get round to drawing properly. So I'm always going to offer the outline. So if you want to trace this down, you need to get your paper ready. Then you put the graphite sheet smudgy side down, and then you place your image on top of that. I'm just going to find the edge of the paper so I'm accurate there. That's about it. And then you get a pen, a fine pen, and preferably a pen that's a different colour to this black outline. I'm using red. And as I'm now tracing over the outline, you can see it's being transferred. So don't let not being able to draw stop you from learning watercolour, is my opinion. By all means try and learn to draw as a separate thing. Drawing is a separate skill from watercolour. So don't worry about it, just get on and trace things down. I did it for years. I'm pleased to say that I now do my own drawings, but for teaching purposes I trace things down often because I want my students and me to have exactly the same image. Okay, so this is the mountain range. I'm pressing quite firmly because I want a strong outline so that you can see it. If I was doing this painting for myself, I might make the outlines a little bit less strong because they can, you know, look a bit, they can interfere a little bit with the overall finish of the painting. It's all personal taste. So let's just get these wiggly pine trees in. These are just symbolic sort of shapes really, because they'll be in the distance and they won't be very detailed, and the paint will cover the outline, my graphite marks, quite well. So it's coming along, you see. These are the middle distance trees, and so they're not very important, although you could say that every element is important in that it forms an integral whole. But put it this way, we won't be putting a lot of detail on these trees. The whole thrust of this painting is to show you how to paint a big landscape scene on a small format, and to paint wet into wet sky, to paint scraggy rocks, and most of all to show you how to paint reflections in water. I'll tell you what brushes I'm going to use in a second. When I'm doing this, I'm sort of going a bit sort of back and forth to make the line a bit scruffy and broken. I just like to do that as my own personal thing. I don't like solid lines. I like to leave little gaps and skip places so that it just has a more drawn look. See if I can zoom in on that for you. You see? So it's a bit erratic there, a bit irregular there. So we'll soon see how good this watercolour block is, won't we? Because I'm going to be painting quite wet into wet, so there'll be a lot of water going on the paper. So we'll see how it performs. Most watercolour blocks do tend to buckle up a little bit, but eventually in the drying process they settle back down, and they're quite a useful halfway house between the unstretched paper and the stretched paper that you stick onto a board. So we'll see. Because there's nothing worse than trying to frame a painting, a watercolour painting that's buckled, because it just will not sit flat under the mount and it looks really unprofessional. There are things your framer can do, like sticking it to a dry board, which he has to do really perfectly first time round because there's no second chances with that. So if you want to entrust your watercolour to the framer, then that's always an option, which does get rid of some of the wrinkles in your paintings. The best thing though is to get it right in the beginning, isn't it? And have stretched paper or paper that is so thick, like 600 GSM, so that there's hardly any risk of it buckling at all. The thicker the paper, the less risk of it buckling. The lighter, the thinner the paper, the more risk of it buckling. Right, so there's the image. Okay. Right, so my brushes. I've got a 1/2 inch flat. These are all synthetic brushes, by the way. Then I've got a size 0 round, a size 1 round, a size 3 round and a size 5 round, and another flat. That's a 1/4 inch flat. These are good for wiping out thin lines for ripples in the water. So as always, I'm going to dip my brushes in my water pot. I have 2 of these water pots. They're about 500 millilitres, a pint of cold clear water. Bang your brushes on the base to get rid of all the air bubbles. Then have a face washcloth at the ready, a towel, a flannel, and because we call these flannels in the UK, but flannel in the USA means like a check shirt, doesn't it? So this is a toweling, it's an absorbent cloth. I prefer these to the microfiber cloths. They just don't do it for me as well as these. So then I make sure that I reshape my brushes with clean fingers, don't have greasy fingers. Reshape them, and then I lay them on the side flat, ready for use. Okay, one more thing that I always have at hand is a little spray bottle, a water spray, because during the painting session my paints might dry out a bit. So I give them a fine mist of water every so often to stop them drying out, because I don't want that custard skin to form on the tube paints. I want them to stay moist and ready to be picked up by my brush. So let's start. I'm going to use my 1/2 inch flat, and I'm going to wet all of this area. Basically I'm going to do the sky first, okay? So I'm going to wet definitely all of the sky, and I'm not worried if the water goes over the mountains a little bit, because the mountains will be painted next and they'll be stronger, and so it'll hide any of the sky painting that I did. So let's moisten that paper. And if we come down over the mountain range a little bit, don't worry. So there's moisture in there now. I'm going to see if I can show you the sheen on that now. Yeah, you can see the shine on there, can't you? Right? Now it's not running. Oh, yeah, see there's a bead forming there. Just tip it to the corner and make sure any beads run off. You can catch them. We don't want it sloshing with water, so you want that lovely shine there. That's it. Now we're ready to put the sky in. So again, with my 1/2 inch flat brush, I'm going to pick up some Winsor blue green shade. A little bit with the corner of my brush. Now there are some blobs of water on the palette, as you can see, so I'm going to drag some of those in, so you can see the dilution I'm making this. Maybe a bit more paint. Go tentatively, don't pick up big blobs of paint, especially if you're working small like this, well, relatively small. I'm trying to mix up enough blue that will do the sky. Be enough for the sky, that should be enough. So now I'm going to drop in some colour. And I'm doing it in a slightly patchy way, but I am going to make sure I cover the top boundary line, the top part, because I don't want the viewer's eye to flow out of the painting. And straight away I want to tip that and let it run. and you can see it's softening. I'm leaving it just blur with the water that's already on the paper. I could just spray a little bit of water on it, on this blue area here, just a bit, and let that run a bit further. Give it time for it to get momentum, and then tip it back the other way. You can see the shine on the paper, can't you? It's still moist. This is because this is cotton rag paper, and cotton rag paper stays more moist than normal cheaper papers like Bockingfoot. Bockingfoot is made of wood pulp, not cotton. Okay, and I'm going to let that dry completely. So I'll see you in the next clip. It's been about 10 minutes and I've gone and made a cup of tea. The paper is still drying, and I just wanted to show you this. See that? That is still buckling. That's still dimpling. So this is the trouble with watercolour blocks. People think if they buy them they can paint on them and they won't buckle. Well, they do a bit. That will dry back down probably to be less noticeable, but they're not perfect. I just want to show you that. You see that dimpling? I'm going to put the hairdryer on it very briefly, although I don't like doing that, to see if it'll bring it down flatter, and it probably will. See you in the next clip. Right, good news is that this paper now, I've put the hairdryer on it for about 2 minutes, very gently, and that buckling has completely gone. It's shrunk back down, it's tightened up, dried up, and it's gone flat. So that's fabulous, isn't it? The way to tell if your painting is bone dry is to use that soft fleshy part of the base of your thumb. Touch it gently, and if you feel any coolness in the paper, then there's probably still moisture in there. You can test by, testing a dry piece of the paper, thinking how warm or cold that is, and then go into your area you've just dried and seeing if there's a difference. I'm sensing a little bit of coolness here still. So rather than risk starting to paint my mountings on slightly damp paper, which could result in this paint bleeding into that paint, I'm going to give it a dry. Again with the hairdryer. And again, just let it cool down a minute, otherwise your results will be skewed, because if I feel that, it's going to be hot from the hairdryer. So just let it all have a minute or two to just rebalance. Feel that now? Yeah, those are both the same now. So we're ready to roll, and we're going to start on the mountains. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch flat brush now. Remember, we dampened it at the beginning and we wiped it into shape. Well, I haven't touched it since then, and it's still got a slight bit of dampness in there. Now, to do these mountains, we're going to use something called dry brush technique. So we don't want a soaking wet brush, but we do need a tiny little bit more moisture on there before we can, excuse me, pick up the paint. So to get a tiny bit more moisture, I'm going to let it go into a little blob there, little blob there. This is where watercolour, why people go wrong with watercolour is because they don't take enough care with how much moisture is on their brush, and you need to be happy with that. Be happy with, knowing the fine differences between slightly damp brush, a soaking wet brush, etc. So that now has had a little bit more water just pumped into it. Just dabbing in some of these droplets that are on the palette, and you can do this by spraying your spray again and creating some palettes. So you've got little areas that you can charge your brush up. Now that's probably gone a bit too wet. So we'll see. So to get the colour for these craggy rocks, we're going to pick up some burnt umber, and I'm going to mix it on a dry part of the palette. I'm not going to mix it in there because that's going to be wet, too wet. So there we are. There's some dark brown burnt umber. It's almost neat from the tube. You know, it's that gooey consistency. Then we'll hop over and pick up some Winsor blue-green shade and mix that in. That's given us quite a greenish colour. It's a bit greener than I wanted actually. So I'm going to pick up some more blue, Winsor blue, green shade, more again. Right, that's about the consistency we want, and let's just try it out. See, you're getting scragginess there. This is called dry brush. Paper's dry and the brush is more or less dry. It's got a tiny bit of moisture in and no more. So we can try and put some of those crags in now. I'm going to hold my brush like this. So I've got it flat to the paper. Okay, so let's do the distant one first. Because the paper is cold pressed, it's got a little bit of tooth to it. And so it grabs hold of some of this paint. And now I'm going to come at a slight diagonal to get the strata of the rocks going. So very carefully. And I'm letting it disappear to nothing there, because that could be full of snow, couldn't it? That could be a snow gully. Again, let's do this one, the furthermost one. So I want a dark area in there. So I'm using the corner of my brush for that. And then drag away. Oops, I've gone out a bit there, never mind. And just do a little bit of an edge to define the mountain, like that. Okay, so there's some that side. Let's go over this side now. Same colour, so I'm loading up again, and I'm keeping my brush in this flat condition, the sharpness of it, flat condition there. So let's pop a few here. So these now are coming downwards. These are the distant crags. And again, I'm letting them go to nothing behind these trees. Actually, forgot to do this one. So load up my brush again. And again, I want this diagonal slant. So I brush it up like that. Oh, I've gone into the sky again, never mind. Brush it up like that and then drag down. And in some places make it thicker, and other places just make it more scumbled. That's the word, scumbly, where there's a broken finish to your marks. I want a strong edge there so that it makes the mountain look strong on its outline, and then just drag down. I'm leaving the trees. I'm not painting over the trees, just leave those be. And again, I'm going to have to turn my painting because there's a better angle for me to get this diagonal feel. You can do the same as well. So I'm actually, again, I want, if I hold the brush like that, it's too pointy and vertical, so I need to hold it by the ferrule and keep it almost flat to the paper. And you need to add quite a bit of paint on so that you can use the corner of the brush and coax some of that paint to get onto the paper, and then drag it down again. Now I've run out of paint, so I need to get some more of the burnt umber, more of the Windsor blue-green shade. Mix them two together on the palette. It's quite a dark, lovely dark colour. Now here, this part of the mountain is in front of that one, so I need to, make that a strong solid edge to separate the front mountain from the back mountain. I want that to be solid there, so I'm pressing it down a bit more. Okay, now let's carry on. So along this ridge, scumble, scumble. This takes a bit of practice. If you're not happy with doing it straight onto your painting, get a piece of scrap paper and have a go of this technique, doing it that way. Okay, so I need that hard ridge there because I have to put this mountain range in front of the distant one for recession, the feeling of recession. Alright, so there they are coming. And same again, if you don't mind, I'm going to flick this on its side because it's easier for me to work to put these ridges in. If you're finding the paint isn't coming off well enough, just dab it very gently in some very small bits of water there, and then pick up some more moisture, and then that will deposit it a bit more richly, but still you should get the dry brush look. Yeah, that's a bit better. But what we want is still a bit of that scumbled feeling. And I'm trying to do vertical, irregular vertical sections so that it looks believable. I want the ridge there. The tree is cutting through it there. And then onto this ridge that's taking us eventually out of the picture. So again, twist and turn the angle of your brush to suit you, and then drag that paint down. Let me zoom in on this last section so you can see what I'm doing here. This is called dry brush or scumbling, and it gives us a ragged organic finish, great for rocks and stones. So as you can see, part of my paper is left white, part of it's got half a covering, and part of it's got a solid line. So there's contrast, and as artists we need contrast, otherwise things look a bit safe and dead. Right, so that's how it's looking there now. So we've got some spiky mountains in, haven't we? Okay, I'll show you what we're going to do with these in the next clip.